lover salute his sweetheart. La donna immobile, qual piuma al vento, muta d'accento e di pensiero. I'll only live for the kiss that you alone may give me. Drink, drink, let the toast of me. Young hearts never part. Drink, let every true lover salute his sweetheart. Let's drink. Mario Lanza was a superstar before that word was even invented. He died unexpectedly at the age of 38. His career had lasted little more than a dozen years. But he entertained and influenced us all, an amazing success story. And yet, it is also the story of an unfulfilled dream, for Mario Lanza didn't get what he really wanted, what he always believed he was born to have. This is what he wanted. The stage of an opera house. From stages like this, facing a standing room only audience, night after night, in many difficult roles, interpreting the great masters in front of very demanding listeners, and afterward the acclamation of those audience and the admiration of music critics. This is what Mario Lanza wanted from boyhood. Throughout his life, Lanza considered his voice God-given, and Enrico Caruso, his divine mentor. He was born in 1921, the year Caruso died. It was the high point of his movie career when he acted out the fantasy that had both strengthened and tormented him. Lanza played Caruso. It was a role he had been rehearsing all his life. In una smorfia e sinchiato quel dolor ribagliato sul The great Caruso includes at least a dozen wonderful arias, a tantalizing sampler of the greatest operas of all times. Mario Lanza brought opera in that way to a new audience and attracted the classical music fans back to the movies. Non discordar di me. Mai tanto la vita. Poiché va preso in escomeso.
Lanza, everybody knows, and everyone that has known him at all knows that he was very spoiled by the movie people, by Mr. Mayer especially, who kept calling him Caruso, and his head became larger and larger, and he was just impossible to handle. He would get terribly fat, and then they'd have to thin him down, and we had a great deal of worry about whether he was going to show up on the set half the time. But it was, he was really sounded fantastic in the film. Of course, he had to do many takes, but his voice was, I think, I've always said that I think Mario Lanza probably could have been the American Caruso. He could have had any opera house in this country that he wanted if he could have learned.
He had that what Caruso had, and Caruso is today famous not because of beautiful voice, because you cannot recognize the real voice through a microphone, particularly not on the old recordings, which were doctored up now completely, where a modern engineer, by turning a dial, can make out of a small voice a big voice. He had the most brilliant, natural, broad voice without limitation, and he had a natural peasant aggressiveness, which was so good in Caruso's recording, because what the Caruso recording made famous was not the quality of the voice, but this vitality, this tremendous vitality he had. And that Mario absolutely had. And he would really had become what already his neighbors in Philadelphia said, an American Caruso.
The Great Caruso was the biggest money-making movie in America that year, and it went on to play all over the world. I was a boy of 10 living in Mexico when I saw it. Mario Lanza truly inspired me and many other young singers too.
My first question when he had auditioned at Tanglewood and they loved him so much and they paid for his studies and everything, I said, please tell me, what was the voice like? What was it like? And they raved that the bigness was from the bottom to the top. It never stopped. It was huge and round and rich. And we were really in awe of Mario Lanza, and he was sort of someone to look up to.
As a soprano, I can only say the tenor voice per se is always a very physical experience. The high C from a tenor will always be more exciting than a high C from a soprano. I don't know if that's sexuality, maybe. It's a matter of physics. I don't know. It's his voice, more than most, did have a very sexy character to it.
I also was working with Giacomo Spadoni, who was the chorus master at the Met, and after several years he went out to Hollywood and became the opera coach for all the people like Mario Lanza and Catherine Grayson and anyone who was going to sing anything big, Anna Maria Alberghetti, in the movies. And of course he did a lot of work with Mario Lanza on his pictures. And every time I'd work with him, he'd say, oh, if that boy would only sing the opera. He said, if he would only get away from the movies and concentrate on the opera. And he said he would be the biggest opera star that we had had since Caruso.